Hey, welcome back to my kitchen. I'm going to start working on the macaroni and cheese and the chicken nuggets that we talked about. It's going to take a while, so I am going to edit this video down and make it easier to watch. But in the meantime, we'll get started on some prep work and some other things that we need to do, and we'll get her done. And hopefully it turns out really good because I wanted to for you guys. All right, so first thing we're going to do is I'm going to flip this camera back down to the cutting board, and then we're going to prep our bacon, shallots, and garlic. We're going to get our water on the stove for our pasta, and we're going to get our almond milk on to start heating that up so that we can turn it into a cheese sauce. So we'll start here at the board. We'll get the vegetable prep and the bacon prep done, and then we'll move over to the stove and we'll start putting everything together. All right, so I thought for this dish to add a little bit of subtlety and balance that we'd add a couple of aromatics to it. You saw this when we did the last video. They really do help. So we got a couple of shallots here, which are just a super sweet member of the onion family. They're pretty tasty. And then we got some garlic here. Now this garlic we're going to roast in the oven, 350 degrees for about 15 minutes until it's nice and soft and we can smash it up into a paste. To do that, we're going to need tin foil. We'll lay that out just like that. And then grab a small knife. And some neutral oil, whatever you can use is fine. I'm going with vegetable because that's the oil I like, but this will work with any oil. Coconut oil, peanut oil, safflower oil, whatever you're using. So, I'm going to take, I don't know, 1, 2, 3, let's call it 4 cloves of garlic. And we'll get rid of all these papery bits. Oh, looks like I ended up with 5, so we're going with 5. We'll take just the knob end off here. You don't want to smash this to peel it because you want it to roast whole, so all those oils stay inside of it. And we're just going to take the peel off of it. All right, once you get all that peeled and it's on the tin foil, what we're going to do is we're going to drizzle just a tiny amount of oil over it, right? And then just wiggle it around a little bit to make sure everything gets coated up nice. Put it in a single layer. We're going to hit it with a tiny amount of salt. I prefer kosher salt over iodized, but use whatever you want. And then we're going to take our foil, we're just going to make a pouch out of this. Now we're going to put this directly on the oven rack, 350 degrees for 15 minutes, and just let it hang out in there. Don't move it around, none, just let it sit. And while that's doing that, we'll get our shallots all done up. Shallots are a lot like an onion. They're just sweeter. They have a milder flavor. And I really think that they're going to help bring some nuance to the dish that we're working with because of all the flat flavors of all the vegan foods. Because they're not exactly exciting foods. They're good substitutes, but they're not the best. So we'll just take and cut that in half that way. Take that outer layer of skin off. And then we're just going to dice these finely. You don't want it to be too big in the final product. You don't want them to take away from the flavors, or not the flavors, but the visual of the actual mac and cheese. So we're just going to give these a really fine mince. Just a super duper fine mince. We're using a little bit of bacon to help the flavors come together with the fat, because there's not a lot of fat in this dish. So just like we did with the shrimp and grits, we're going to cut this down into small dices. This is going to add some necessary fat to the lack of fat and everything else. All right, we're going to go over to the stove and start putting stuff together. We've got our bacon and our onions. We're going to work on those in a little bit. But first things first, we want to get our dairy and our pasta water going, because gluten-free pasta takes a while to cook, and we want to heat the milk slowly. We don't want it to be burn, because it'll scorch it. It'll taste like shit. So we want to heat that up slowly. So for this application, because nuts and cheese play well together, I got the Almond Breeze unsweetened. We're going to take about, I don't know, 2 cups, 3 cups. Go with what you feel, whatever you're making. I'm making cheese sauce, so it's going to take a little bit more than we think anyway. We're going to turn that on to low and let that heat up gradually. As it starts to heat up, we'll increase the temperature, but don't start on high right away, or that'll scorch and it's going to taste like shit. Looks like my ring light is adding a little too much light. So we've got our almond milk on, heating up slowly. We're going to start our pasta. And I want to bake this, so I'm going to cool this pasta off after it's done cooking. And then we're going to mix it with the cheese and throw it in the oven. That'll stop the cooking process. It'll stop it from getting mushy. It'll still have some bite to it, which is what you want in a pasta. I'm sure you've heard the term al dente before. So we're going to turn that on high. And yes, you probably noticed I was wearing an apron this time. It's because when we get to the chicken nugget part, I'm going to be working with flour and I don't want it all over my shirt. So, well, the waters are coming up. We're going to do like we did last time. We're going to render the fat out of the bacon. We're going to render out the bacon, so we're going to turn this front burner on high heat. I'm going to add just a drop of oil like we did with the shrimp and grits, just to get the bacon started. If you want to use the vegan butter for that, that's fine too. It'll work out great either way. And I know I told you about the Berea gluten-free. Unfortunately, my local market was out, so I got a similar analog, which is the local grocery store's brand. Same idea, same texture, still just as tasty. But please, if you can, get the Berea. It's so much better. Now to our heated up oil, we're going to add our bacon. And we're going to render the fat out of this, get it nice and crispy. We're going to set a little bit of the fat aside to cook our onions in. And then our shallots in. And then the rest of it will get tossed, and we'll put the bacon in the macaroni and cheese. We got to that point where our fat's all rendered out of our bacon. We want to keep this bacon out of the fat, so we're going to strain it to a strainer into a bowl, just to separate the bacon bits from the grease itself. We want that grease to continue cooking with, and we want all that bacony goodness inside of our mac and cheese at the end result. Alright, so to this pan we're going to add some of the bacon grease back in. Tablespoon or two is plenty. You don't need a ton. We're going to add our shallots to that. You just want to sweat these down. We don't want to overcook them too much because they'll leave dark spots. Once they've already started to take on some color, we'll add the bacon back to it. Get these two together. And then as soon as the two are together, get the shit off the heat. Because like I said, you don't want them shallots to brown up too much. So we're going to take this right off the heat. And that's now ready to go into our cheese sauce when the cheese sauce is done. Because we don't want to add it to it now, because it's going to leave inconsistencies in the cheese sauce. So I want to make sure this comes together with all that vegan cheese before I do anything else to it. Turn down the left front here. Put our almond milk up front. Water's up to a rolling boil, so we're going to add our pasta. We only want to cook this to about 70%. You want it to still have toothiness to it. You want it to, when you bite into it, you want it to feel like it just lost its crunch. You don't want to have it all soggy and ugh. So since it's only me, I'm going to only add half of this bag. This is standard, I guess 3/4 of the bag. It's a standard 1 pound box. I don't know if you can see it, but you can start to see some steam coming up off the almond milk. So we're going to increase the heat again to a 3. And we're going to let that keep coming up to temp. It's been about 6 minutes. You can see, well, the light's kind of shitty, but there's a good amount of steam coming off the top of the almond milk now. So we're going to turn that up to a 4. We're going to let that keep heating up. Our pasta should be pretty close. Very close. Needs about another minute. It's still a little crunchy, but we're going to put the cheese sauce in it and put it in the oven. So it's going to absorb some of the liquid. It's going to finish cooking the pasta without making it mushy. Alright, we're going to give this about 30 more seconds, and then we're going to strain it and run cold water over it and cool it right down, because we don't want it to cook anymore until it goes in the oven. Alright, so there's our cooked and cooled pasta. We're going to let that just sit over that pot for right now, dribble the rest of the way out. Turn our almond milk up to a 5. Now, what we're going to do with this is we're going to use a little bit of cornstarch. I use the Argo brand, it's my preferred. And we're going to start to thicken this just lightly. Like, you just want to feel the difference in the change of the texture of the liquid, because we're going to add a bunch of shit to it that's going to make it thicker, and you don't want it too thick. I got a variation of cheese substitutes here. A few of them you already know about from the last time we did this. I got the Vitalife cream cheese. We're going to add that in there, the rest of this. I got the Just Like cheddar shreds that we got last time for the shrimp and grits as well. To that, we're going to add some American cheese knockoff, because that's going to help balance everything together. We're going to add our cashew cheese dip, queso style, for a little bit of little kick, not too heavy. And then we're going to add a decent scoop of our soy butter, or our vegan butter, just to give it that, you know, that buttery richness. So you can see, I don't know if you can see, but this is starting to come up to a rolling boil now. So we need to reduce our heat back to low. And we're going to make a slurry out of our cornstarch, which is just plain old water and cornstarch. And just mix it in until you feel a difference. It'll thicken. It'll feel kind of like, no, I mean, it's fucking cornstarch. It'll have kind of a light thickness to it, but you don't want it too bad. It should have the consistency of whole milk when you're done. Now we're going to add this a few drops at a time until we feel the texture in our almond milk change. Like, we want it to start to thicken, but we don't want it thick. Another good way to judge it is if there's bubbles on top. The bubbles will go away when it's the right spot. You can see that it's now taken on almost a heavy cream consistency. We'll set our shit over here. Now to this, the first thing we're going to add is we're going to add our butter. I cut out about 2 tablespoons of it a little bit ago. We're going to add that, and we're going to stir that in until it's fully incorporated. And that's going to cause it to thin down a little bit, which is good, because we're going to add a bunch of cheeses to it, so it's going to thicken right back up. Once your butter's melted, to that we're going to add our faux cream cheese. We're going to add the other half the container that we didn't add from the last batch. This is going to add some depth and richness. Now we're going to do the same thing as we did with the butter. Just stir it until it's in, until it's incorporated. It's got a decent smell so far. Alright, once you got that fully incorporated, we're going to go in next with our cashew cheese dip. She's got a funky color to her, but it'll be okay. We'll balance it, don't worry. We're going to add about a third of the container. We don't want a ton of it in there, because we don't want those nuts to distract from the flavor. And stir that in. We're going to take the last third of our bag of our faux cheddar that we used last time. And we're going to melt that in. That'll start to change that color a little bit. To this, we're going to add our fake American cheese. We're going to add this one slice at a time because we're not sure what the melting quality is. This kind of has the same texture that the cheddar cheese had, so it's kind of off-putting, but hopefully we can turn it into something delicious. Oops. The cheddar cheese doesn't seem to be melting the way we'd like it to, but we're going to be okay. Not the American cheese. Taking on a pretty nice cheese sauce consistency at this point, where it's just starting to thicken up perfectly. It's a little watery still, but that's fine because the pasta is going to draw a lot of the liquid out of there. Take a peek at our garlic here. It smells like it's done. Oops. It's also hot. Perfect. You can see the garlic's taking on a light tan color. It's nice and soft. So what we're going to do is we're going to close this back up. And we're just going to mash that up with whatever you got. The back of a spoon will work. I just happen to have a potato masher handy. I'll smash that all up into a nice paste. See? You can pull the little crunchy bits out, that's fine. We'll just get our liquidy garlic, and then we'll get rid of the, unless you like those bits in there, that's fine. I mean, but we're going to do this the right way for the video. So now we got all this nice liquid garlic. Want our last couple of pieces of the American cheese. Melt those down in there. Now we're going to give this a taste, and we're going to add our any seasonings to it that we need to add. Excuse me. Which I know are going to be at least a couple, because there's some things in here that need to go in here. So we're back to our nutritional yeast, our cheese flavored substitute. And then we have some ground mustard, which is going to give it a kick. And of course we got, salt. I like kosher salt. And we want to taste this before we add our shallots, our bacon, and our garlic to it, because we already know what onions, garlic, and bacon taste like. So what we're trying to do is compensate for the lack of flavoring with those items. If you don't feel like you can imagine what it's going to taste like, then add your stuff now and then season it. You know what? We're going to do it that way anyway, because I don't know I know your palate. So we'll take our liquid garlic that we mashed up. We'll add that in there. And then we'll go in with our shallots and bacon that we prepared earlier. We'll blend those in nicely. It smells like cheese sauce. It smells pretty tasty, actually. See, it's got the right consistency. It's nice and drooly, and it looks like cheese. All right, so we're gonna give it a quick taste, see where we're at. It's all right. It's got a nice, like, layered cheesiness to it, but it's got like an odd sweetness. I think it's from the American cheese. So we're gonna add about, let's call it a cup of nutritional yeast. And then to that, we're going to add a tablespoon of ground mustard. We'll add a couple of teaspoons of salt. And just to fucking make sure it's got everything it needs, we're going to add just a teaspoon of black pepper. It smells really nice, actually. Give her another taste before we call her good. It smells really good. It tastes just like sharp cheddar now. It's got that kind of weird almond taste, but all right. So we got our cooled off pasta here. I went with rotini. Add that to the pot. We're gonna dump our cheese sauce right over the top of it. Like I said, I know it looks like a lot for that little bit of pasta, but it's going to absorb a ton of liquid because we only cooked it to like 85–90%, right? We got that all blended together. I'll grab a baking dish. Just I have a standard glass casserole dish here. bear with me a second here. There we go. That's better. So we've got our macaroni and cheese here. We'll take a little bit of our vegan butter here and just quickly give the inside of this a rub down. If you don't, it's going to cause burning, which I don't know how the vegan cheese is going to react to that, so I don't want to end up with like an odd flavor or something that's going to detract from the dish. So we're just going to make sure that we don't have any stuck on burnt shit. All right, so pour your macaroni and cheese into your casserole dish. Make sure we get all that goodness in there. All right, now to that, because I want to give it some texture, we're going to throw our... Oh, that was a horrible sound. I'm definitely going to cut that out. We're going to throw a skillet on here and get that warmed up. We're going to give it a little bit of this this vegan butter. Probably about a tablespoon. Yeah, a tablespoon and a half. And I found these gluten-free panko breadcrumbs by 4C. They don't contain anything: rice flour, raisin juice, honey, and salt. So we're going to get our butter melted down. And to that, if I can get this fucking thing open, we're going to add our panko. The reason we're doing it this way and not just putting the panko on the top is because the vegetable oil fats in there are going to allow this panko to brown up a bit, and it's going to give it a nice crispy texture on top with some good browning. If you don't do it this way, panko doesn't tend to brown. It just tends to stay the same color and get hot and pissed off. So we definitely want to incorporate a little bit of oil. If you want to use whatever your oil of choice is, coconut oil, grapeseed oil, whatever you got, by all means do. But once we get our butter incorporated in that, we're just going to layer it over the top of the macaroni and cheese in a single, comprehensive layer. And we're going to let this take a visit in the oven, 350 degrees, for about 25 minutes, give or take. You may want to, because we put so much, I put so much in the fucking pan. I'm going to put it on a sheet tray while it's in the oven, just in case it bubbles over. But this is what it looks like pre-oven. And we're going to give it a nice healthy run in the oven for about 20 minutes, 25. All right, so the oven timer just went off, and I got to say this has looked pretty damn good, if I'm being honest. So let's take a peek at it and take it out of the pan and see what it looks like. So this is our finished product right here. It's hot as fuck. You can see that the panko browned up nicely. The bubbliness of the cheese sauce coming out. It's thickened up a little bit. That means that the pasta did what it was supposed to do. So, that being said, let's take some of this out and fucking dish it up, see how it looks. Oh, that is fucking gooey and beautiful. Make sure we keep some of that crunch on top, yeah. Oh. And there you go. That is mac and cheese you can eat. It looks pretty tasty. I tried the sauce before it went in, but let's give her another go, shall we? Like I said, it's hot as fuck, so if I burn myself, fuck off. I hate that that tastes that good. It's definitely better in the box though. It's got a nice creaminess to it. The almond milk's a little bit more prevalent than I'd like, but I think it's because we added cashew cheese to it. But other than that, that is a damn fine macaroni and cheese substitute. So enjoy.